There we go, and we're off. Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome to the Welsh Azure User Group Virtual Meetup on the 21st of December 2022. Happy Christmas! Not many days away for us now. As always, we've got our kind of organising staff behind the scenes, peeps that kind of bring these sessions to you. And anybody on that LinkedIn, excuse me, you'd have to bear with my cold is really getting the better of me. Anybody you can see on the screen, feel free to add us on LinkedIn, message us, get in contact. This is a community user group. It's, ideally it's all driven by people that come and join the group, come and speak at the group. We want to get the best out there around Azure. So if you've got any ideas or suggestions or you want to speak, feel free to reach out to any of us and we can kind of take that on board. And the more the merrier. So the more ideas you've got, send them our way. Really love to hear it.
Sorry. Is this meeting free?
It's absolutely free. It's free for all. You don't have to live in Wales. You don't have to be from Wales. You can join wherever you are, as long as it's virtual. So whereabouts are you?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, you don't have to pay a penny. It's completely community driven. So thank you for joining. Take that sigh as you're happy to be here. Right, let's crack on. We've got two fantastic speakers joining us tonight. We've got Joe Hubbert will be on with us fairly soon to talk around migrating on-prem SQL environments into Azure, what our options are and all that good stuff. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. It's the kind of... can you go on mute a sec? Sorry, Ego, if you're there. Thanks. Looking forward to seeing that session. It's always one that's close to my heart with customers that I've worked with in the past. So looking forward to that. And then after that, we've got Jackson Felden, and Jackson is going to be joining us to talk around how do we protect our identities. Ego, are you okay? You keep coming off mute. No? Okay, cool.
Okay, yes, I'm okay. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm okay.
No worries. Okay, so we shall get on with it. So timing wise, we're looking at around about 10 minutes or so. I'll just go through a few slides, housekeeping rules, things like that, and then we'll crack on with Joe's session. And then Jackson should be joining us around about 7:30. That's GMT. So if you're not in the UK, adjust that time to suit. Quiz, got to stick around for the quiz. This month we've got an epic festive quiz, so join in with the festivities. I'll get onto the prize in a second. We've got like a plethora of prizes, so really looking forward to seeing how that quiz pans out. It's always an epic quiz when Matt's involved anyway. So generally speaking, round about 8:30, so a couple of hours from now, we'll be kind of drawing to a close. So yeah, a couple of housekeeping rules. Please, everybody, be courteous to each other. Should go without saying there. This is a community event. It's all about fun, learning. We're talking about stuff in and around Azure. There are no silly questions. So if you've got any questions whatsoever, please do drop them in the chat. The chat facility is there open, to kind of join in, be as active as you can in there and help each other out. If anybody's got any questions that you know the answer to, please do be active in there. Like I say, please do stay on mute unless you're invited to come off mute and speak by one of the speakers. Obviously, just some background noise can put people off and whatnot as they're working through this. So if you could be respectful of that would be really appreciated. And like I say, because it's a community quiz, we'd love to have your feedback. So I'll drop a QR code at the end of the session tonight, and any feedback that you've got, suggestions, ideas, thoughts, you join in, please do drop us some feedback. It's always appreciated. And don't forget to join the quiz. The quiz will be immediately after Jackson's talk. That's our second speaker's talk, a little bit later. But for the most part, be interactive, enjoy the sessions, and take part. So yeah, just on a note about the quiz, we've managed to secure a couple of really decent prizes for tonight's festive quiz. We've got a first place prize of an Elgato gift set. So that's including a Stream Deck Mini. There's a coffee cup, there's a notepad, there's a pen in there. So really cool prize, all in a nice big gift box there from Elgato. Second place for our quiz winner will be a £25 Amazon voucher. Third place, we've got a code that you can go and order some swag from the Microsoft Store. And then finally, fourth place, I've got a cool Microsoft Azure hoodie that I can get sent out to you. So whoever wins the quiz, make sure I'll drop my email at the end. Make sure you drop me over your address and contact info, and I can get the prizes that need posting, obviously, posted out. Also going to do a tweet and win competition. So if you are joining us, if you can give us your most festive photo and tweet or use LinkedIn, put out on LinkedIn or Twitter, tag us in it, Welsh Azure, or tag me in it, John Lunn, on Twitter, and I'll get to see that. And yeah, give us your most festive photo as you're watching the sessions tonight, and I'll get a winner picked at random tomorrow, and we'll get you a Welsh Azure User Group official T-shirt sent out as well. So there we go. There aren't too many left, so they are a bit rare. So you'd be good to have one of those. They're going to be worth some money, surely, Matt? Don't you think?
Yeah, we might have to update them as well.
We will, yeah. At some point, we will.
Matthew.
Yeah. Okay, right. Next up, we've got a big shout out to our sponsors. So first off, big thanks to Servant. They're a really great support to the user group.
Matthew.
Ego,
Hey.
have you got a question, Ego?
Yeah. Where can I get Matthew's hat?
Sorry, Ego, say that again.
Where can I get Matthew's hat?
Oh,
On the
good. Gotta
shops.
B&M,
Amazon.
home bargains. Always good for a Santa hat.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. We get it. Okay.
Cool. Ego, if you can use the chat, any questions for now? We'll crack on with the sessions tonight, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okey-dokey.
Okay.
Thanks, Ego. Okay, so yeah, big shout out to Servant. Thanks for being awesome. And as always, Admiral have been a supporter of ours for a fairly long time now as well. So big shout out to those guys, and obviously NetApp as well. So we are fortunate enough to have three fantastic sponsors of the user group that have supported us for the last few years. So big shout out to those guys there. If you didn't know, Welsh Azure User Group is part of the Azure Tech community on Meetup. If you are looking for a user group in and around your area, you can go on to the Meetup group, search for the Azure Tech groups within Meetup, and you'll see that we are, I think it's up to about 150 groups now. So they are spread globally. So go and find a user group close to your geography and take part. Like I say, support the local community user groups. And just a word about the Festive Tech Calendar. If you weren't aware, head on over to festivetechcalendar.com. That's a community-run event that's been going on throughout the month of December. They're doing all sorts of sessions. I think there's 3 or 4 sessions a day, all community-driven, every day in December. Head on over, festivetechcalendar.com, and go and check out some of that fantastic content on there that lots of people from the community have put together, and it's available for you to consume. And on the note of conferences, SQL Bits will be at the ICC Wales in March in 2023, so March 14th to 18th. Okay, Ego, can I ask you not to shout out if that's okay, please, mate?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you are interested in joining SQL Bits, there is it is a paid for conference, but if you're looking to attend, there is a voucher available, 5% discount using the UG5 Welsh Azure code. If you do go and get yourself signed up for that, you can get yourself some discount off that ticket price there. So okay, let me shift ahead. Not that one. Let's get on with the show. Okay, so here we go. We'll kick off with the first event. Thank you, Joe, for joining us. Looking forward to the session tonight.
Joe.
Ego, has he gone? Yeah, he's gone.
I removed him.
Yeah, good. I mean, there's only so much I could take there.
What the hell is wrong?
I'm sure he'll join in again.
Just I actually googled Ego Jinpak, and that's actually a Japanese anime cartoon. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I did the same thing as well.
Yeah, so
It's sad. I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to turn the meeting room on and just not let
it was
people
like
bypass.
crazy, right? That's like, what's wrong with him?
does that happen often? This is my first one, but
No, it's the first time we've
first
had
time.
that, to be honest.
okay,
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to be patient there, but
did well. I thought, yeah. Anyway, I'll go back.
I've turned bypass off, so we might get a few pings if more people try and join, but I'll filter them out now and obviously not allow. He might come in under a different name now, I'm sure, but we'll try and control it as best we can. But yeah, first time for me, so apologies everybody for having to put up with that, but there we go. So, Joe, don't be afraid. We got your back, mate, if he comes back on.
Tiago!
Oh, here we go. We got another one, have we? Who was that then? Was that Marwin? Oh, dear. Okay, we'll look out for whoever that is then. We'll, wow. Got into the wrong answer tonight, haven't we?
Matthew!
Okay. Marwin, that was. There we go. Marwin's gone as well. I'm sure there's probably another one there at the bottom. Oh, that's a shame. Never mind, eh? Right, Joe.
Right.
I mean, we try not to be too put off, obviously, but we'll do our best to filter this out now as best we can.
Cool. Right, let's see if PowerPoint live mode works today. Okay, I'm just going to share over the top of you. That's okay?
Yeah, you carry on.
Okay, I'm just going to turn my camera off as well. Cool, right. Okay, can you see my slides?
Got it? Yeah.
Yep, cool. Right, okay, so today I'm just going to have a quick 30-40 minute talk around migrating on-premise SQL to Azure and what the different options are or different approaches you might want to take. So just a bit of an introduction. Who am I? So I work as a cloud architect in financial services. I've been working with Azure for just over 5 years now, specializing in the data platform, and very recently moved over to the architecture role. So I've worked in a variety of industries. So I've worked with tech, with travel, retail. So I've got a good base understanding, I guess, of what people might want from the cloud. So that being said, let's jump right in. So we've got our classic on-premise SQL, so we've got SQL Server, and then you've got open source Maria, MySQL, PostgreSQL. And then of course there's others like Oracle, but that's too expensive to do a demo on, and is actually not covered by the native Microsoft tooling, which is a real shame. So if we just go on to the next slide. So when it comes to the migration itself, there is no right answer for the end solution. It always comes down to the age-old commonly used phrase in IT. It depends. So we can make use of the provided frameworks that Microsoft offer to us, so the cloud adoption framework, so we can get our migration plan properly and we can put in best practices where we can. So recently I've been using that myself, and it's actually highlighted a load of stuff that both we were doing well and we were a bit ahead of the game, but also areas where we can improve, which is pretty cool. Nevertheless, the migration, no matter the complexity, is a journey you've got to go on from the planning all the way through to the implementation. So let's start that journey by not starting at the planning phase, but thinking about the technical implementation we might want to do. So if we're talking about the database engine for Microsoft SQL Server, there's plenty of those around. So we've got Azure SQL Database, which is one of the first services actually available on Azure, and that's really cool because that lets you scope your compute, etc., all down to one database. So if you've got several databases that are you've got several databases in your estate, but you've maybe got one or two that are really high traffic, just put all your high compute resource to those and just put minimum compute resource to the others, which is pretty nice. And using the PaaS option, so we've got Azure SQL Managed Instance as well. So that is pretty much a near 100% like for like with comparison, I guess you could say, to SQL Server on-premise. I think there are a few exceptions to features that aren't supported, and very recently Microsoft have made a lot of advancements in this area. For example, one big blocker that's been in place for a while is that you couldn't use Windows authentication with your managed instance. That's very recently gone generally available, and also I think memory optimized clusters, and also availability zone aware clusters. That's also pretty new, which helps adoption a lot. And then we've got Synapse Analytics. That's your data warehouse workload. So when you've got like really big data sets, you've got maybe if you've got fact tables that have got 60 million plus rows, what we can do, we can make use of massively parallel processing. That's quite a mouthful. And that basically means that you can, instead of having one SQL Server as your single point of failure handling your whole query, you can size up your data warehouse. So the highest use you go, you get more parallel compute nodes. So if you've got a massive query, instead of just put it in one place, it will be spread across all the nodes in the cluster that's currently deployed, which is really cool. And then if you can't use any of those, for whatever reason, you've got some legacy feature that just isn't available in any of the other options, we can just deploy SQL Server in a VM, and in some cases, that's what you got to do. But the gap between cloud and on-premise is becoming even narrower now, especially with the release of SQL Server 2022. So we've got things like authentication using Azure Active Directory, which is really cool, amongst other things. So yeah, that's in the nutshell the database engine side of things. So if we skip forward, so SSIS, you've probably worked with it before, and you're just as frustrated as I am. Sorry to the Microsofties on this call, but Microsoft aren't exactly quick with releasing the SSIS tooling when each new versions of Visual Studio that come out, which is can be quite frustrating sometimes. But yeah, so again, we can just deploy it as is on a VM, or we can store the our SSIS catalog in managed instance, and we can also put it in an Azure SQL database. So we've got PaaS services hosting the catalog, and then we can make use of Azure Data Factory to actually execute our packages. Yes, to handle the compute layer, although that can be expensive even with hybrid compute. So yeah, that's integration services. So we have a look at analysis services. So Azure Analysis Services, I've personally not used commercially, but it is actually the back end service of the Power BI service, which is pretty cool. And unlike the previous technologies that we've been looking at just now, it unfortunately doesn't support private endpoints or internalization in your internal network, which is a bit of a shame, because all the other technologies that are managed instance, VMs, SQL database, ADF, they all support private endpoints, and that's something that helps you, I guess, innovate in areas where you wouldn't be able to previously, previously, where Microsoft is just making more and more investment in the securing of the resources that you're deploying. So yeah, you could deploy your so I guess your tabular cubes into Azure Analysis Services. You can put them into Power BI, and to be honest, unless you've got no reason to really, it's probably better to just put it into Power BI. Unless you have really compute intensive cubes, then you're probably better going with Analysis Services, but that's probably the only case. SSRS, so it's pretty much the industry standard reporting tool for paginator reports since a long time ago, a long time before I started working in IT. It's still kicking around. You can't get rid of it as much as you want to. So I think in 2019, Microsoft made it generally available where if you had Power BI Premium, you could actually host your paginated reports in the Power BI service, which is great if your company has the budget for Power BI Premium. Unfortunately, most of the companies that I've worked with up until now have not had that budget. However, at the past Data Summit in November of this year, Microsoft announced that they were going to make that feature available for Power BI Pro users. So that's a much lower price point than what we essentially 50% less than was people were paying before, which is pretty cool. And then also, as I was talking about earlier with SQL Server 2022, how Microsoft's narrowing that gap between on-premise and the cloud. So as part of SQL Server Reporting Services 2022, there is actually a native migration tool built into SSRS. So you can say, here's my Power BI workspace, go and put all my reports there. And then what's even better is that this is not just a feature that's available for 2022. It's actually going to be backfilled in 2019 and 2017, which is really exciting. Again, you could just install it like normal. And it's probably worth a shout out to the open source offerings as well. Microsoft's done a really good job there. We've got Maria, MySQL, and PostgreSQL, and very recently Microsoft actually announced a engine for MongoDB in Cosmos DB, so we can get that flexible powerful compute available in Cosmos, but apply it to Mongo. Sorry, not MongoDB. PostgreSQL. What am I talking about? Okay, yeah, ignore everything I said about Mongo. I meant PostgreSQL. So when we say we're migrating stuff to the cloud, to Azure, it doesn't mean you have to move to the cloud. You can bring Azure to you, so we can deploy the majority of these services, PaaS services, in your on-premise data center through Azure Stack HCI. So we can deploy the managed instance, Azure Arc Enabled Service, so VMs. We can do Azure Arc Enabled SQL Service, so that's your Azure SQL databases, PostgreSQL, which is really cool. That's that. And what's pretty nice is I think all of these technologies have like-for-like feature parity with their cloud equivalents, which is really useful. So obviously that's the tech, but what about everything you've got to think about when you're moving stuff across? So are there any regulatory, legal, contractual requirements? So I do a lot of work with the public sector, and a lot of the contracts we get coming through actually stipulate that the data's got to be stored / processed in the UK. So that leaves you with 2 Azure regions. I know this is the Welsh Azure user group, but in a high availability scenario, I don't really count UK West as a highly available option. It's really only one option, which is UK South, which you can deploy into multiple availability zones. UK West only has one. And then are there any regulatory requirements? So Microsoft has actually, when I was writing these slides, I checked this. They had over 110 standards that they comply to globally. So that ranges from things that we used to in the UK, so like G Cloud for the government, PCI DSS, so I do a lot of that, ISO 27001, GDPR, and then we go further afield, HIPAA for the US, and also the Department of Defense has several accreditations as well. And all the documentation for that is available in the Microsoft Compliance Center. And also there's reference architectures as well, so you can make sure that what you're deploying is fully compliant. So, well, yeah, historically on premise, you might have a backup appliance, like a Dell Commvault or something. That's fine, but we can actually add a lot of value by deploying something called Azure Site Recovery Services. So what that does is a PaaS service that lets you do your database backups, your VM backups, and it's really scalable, and you don't have those limitations like you would have done with the Dell Commvault. And then patching. So this is literally hot off the press, as in within the last week. So up until now, if you're deploying VMs in Azure, you would use something like your existing Windows Server Update Services system. You might use the built-in OS patch management, or even deploy a Azure automation account. So people who work with Azure automation accounts, you'll know that like other Azure technologies like Service Fabric, etc., the writing's on the wall for that. It's going to go away at some point. It's not actively being developed for, but Microsoft will still support it. So this has come from a contact I've got within Microsoft. So there's you might have seen this in the portal. It's called Update Management V2. So what that does is you can make use of these new so-called maintenance configurations. So you can deploy your patching policies as a Azure resource. So if you're using ARM, Bicep, Terraform, whatever, you can deploy that policy rather straight away as part of your template, which is really cool. And it's just way easier to manage it than using an automation account. So officially it's in preview right now. Some of it has just gone into GA, but the full solution should be GA in Q1 of next year. So it's worth keeping an eye on if that's something that you've got a concern. So are there any potential compatibility issues? So you got any apps that will only talk to certain versions of SQL Server? Have you got some legacy features enabled? So one that I'm going to keep referring to in this demo, because this is something that in the project I'm in right now, it keeps coming up. So file stream. It's a legacy component for SQL Server that enables you to store unstructured data like documents, images, etc. in your Windows file system in a file share or something, but you want to reference those files in your database. So if you imagine you've got an invoicing system or something, you've got all your invoice details in your database table, but you might want to reference the PDF that invoice is stored on, so you can store that in your database as the invoices are being produced. So that feature is only available on SQL Server in a VM or on-premise. The last time I had contact with the product group for Azure SQL Managed Instance, which would be the likely team to implement that, they said in absolute terms that would not be migrated across. It's a little bit of a shame, because that was like the main blocker for us not moving to managed instance. And then if you got compatibility versions of your databases older than 2008, especially if you're going to PaaS or supported versions of SQL Server, you got to bring those up, the compatibility levels. And I cannot stress enough how important to have your databases in source control. This has come up in the project that I'm on right now. Some of the databases were in source control, but over time there's been massive schema drift, so there could be limited confidence in what you're actually deploying from your repos is reflective of live. So that's something that needs to be fixed, and you can actually do that ahead of the migration. So if you need to upgrade the compatibility versions or make some changes to make your databases compatible, you can you can do that well in advance, and just make some release pipelines for your databases as well. So your Azure pipelines or GitHub Actions, and then you're just abstracting that whole element of human error from the release process. I've done enough releases where something worked in dev and QA, but it didn't work in prod. Why? So if you have your release pipelines and you're defining the steps for each stage, you'll be really confident that what you're deploying in each stage will work in every stage every time. So it's a bit of a boring slide, this one, but it's something that is comes up. I cannot stress enough to, if you're going deploying SQL and you've got a relatively large estate, you will save a lot of money if you go for hybrid benefit. In some cases, it could be like 65% of your annual costs, or over a 3-year period if you're going to do your hybrid licensing. So if you've worked for SQL Server before, you know how expensive Enterprise Edition. So to put what I've just said in perspective, you can in the project that I'm working on, we're deploying we're actually deploying a SQL Server VM always on availability group, just because of the compatibility issues that I've alluded to. So if we went for the Azure provided licensing, we'd be looking at around 50,000 a month in hosting cost, which is quite a lot of money. Or if you go for hybrid benefit over 3 years, you can get that down to around 18k. So that's a significant saving. However, be careful. There were a few points. I'm not sure if this was an error in the cost calculator on the Azure website, but there was actually a point where it was cheaper to take the Microsoft provided licensing than it was for hybrid benefit, but that was on a managed instance and that was on quite a high SKU. And at some point, it's actually cheaper to buy Enterprise Edition licenses than it is to get Standard Edition for the hybrid benefit, especially when it comes to the managed instance. So tooling, so we've got a few options here. So we've got the Database Migration Assistant. This is my favorite one. So it lets you do the assessments of your on-premise SQL databases. So it was going to highlight any breaking changes or compatibility issues you might have. So that could be at the database level and also the server level as well, depending on what you're migrating from/to. So the supported destinations, we've got SQL Server VM, Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Managed Instance. So it will highlight things like if you've got unqualified joins. So an unqualified join is it's quite the unqualified joins are actually from the pre-1992 SQL standards. So that's quite an old bit of code, but that's where you're defining your filtering in your where clause of your queries, which is really not good. So it will highlight things like that where it recommends you should probably do that, or even where in other cases it will tell you what the fix is, which is really good. Some other areas, I think what have we come across where you're using I think it was PowerShell. Yeah, it was PowerShell agent jobs. It said, oh, it's not supported. Great. In managed instance, great, that's cool, but how do I fix it? And so there's a bit of that. So as part of this installation as well, when you install it, there's also a command line tool which you can use. So if you're not sure what SKUs you should be using when you're deploying your databases after you migrate, so no matter what the target is, so SQL Server and a VM, Azure SQL Database, Managed Instance, if you're not sure what you actually need, what you can do is you can set this monitoring tool to run in the background in the command line, and you can set it to run for X amount of time. So, for example, we set it running for a week. So it will just collect data from the SQL Server management views built into the server, and it will extract things like CPU usage, memory usage, IO usage, and it can. And then after you've done that assessment, you can build an interactive report that will tell you, we think you should use X SKU, and this is why, which is really good. And what this migration assistant also does, it can actually do migrations itself. But this is more catered for smaller databases which aren't necessarily business critical. And then there's a similar tool for MySQL as well. So we can actually use the Azure database migration service for our larger databases, where it might be a mission critical database. So if your transactional system where you can't afford to have that long downtime when you're doing the migration. So what you can do is you can do an online migration. So it will take a backup of your database at that point in time, and then it will ship that to the migration service. But what it will also do, it will use in the background, it will use SQL Server replication, and it will take that data and it will make sure that the database and the migration services resource is kept up to date. So when you do that cutover from the migration, you will have, I don't want to say no data loss, but it will be minimal. It should be no data loss if you've planned your migration properly. It's a minimal data loss, if any. So that's online migrations. So I've spoken about it. We can do offline migrations, which is what the data migration assistant does as well. So that's a point in time. Here's the database, go and move it to Azure, and then you just point everything else to there. And it's worth noting that the database migration service also has support for MySQL, PostgreSQL, and MongoDB as well. Yes. And there's also a add-in for Azure Data Studio, which helps you do migrations. But I've been playing around with that, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It's still very buggy, and it's inception phase. So next slide. Yeah. So it's great as it is to move stuff to Azure. Sometimes you've just got to do it if you've not got much time. But if you do have more time for your migration, so I mean, I'm just speculating, if you have like 6 months plus to do your migration, you can really think about, well, I can just move it, but I can also add a lot of value. You can add a lot potential to add value to what you're deploying. But the bottom line is, what you migrate should be as good as, if not better than, what you already have. So that could be something like PaaS services management. So as I talked about before, maintenance configuration, site recovery services for backups. Can you increase availability? So and can you use availability zones or geo-replication? So case in point, in the project I'm working on now, the on-premise data center that we're working with to migrate from, they have 2 data centers next to each other, literally next to each other. I think there's like a couple of 100 yards between them. So if a nuclear bomb blew up Manchester, well, we'd lose all of our customer-facing infrastructure. So yeah, we could think about stuff like that. So the cloud gives you those options, and because of the scale, we can. It can be priced at a point that you can afford as well. So yeah, allocate compute resource appropriately. So we ran those. If we ran those migration tools, we know what we need to have. So there's no need to over provision resource to account for future growth. So sure, it might grow in future, but you can just use Azure Monitor to auto scale your Azure SQL databases if they need to, and scale back down again. We don't have to have that wasted compute. And can we reduce complexity of what you've already got? So can you consolidate multiple SQL servers into one, for example? If you yeah, if you've got loads of small powered servers, can you just make one big one, but you replicate it into an availability group or different availability zones? And then can you increase performance? So you talk about database compatibility levels. So in 2022, when that's been released, well, it has been released, there's been huge advancements in terms of performance when it comes to searches and seeks. But that's in 2022. But even between just 2016 and 2019, there were huge advancements in terms of performance. And we can also take advantage of faster underlying storage. So if you've got in your on-premise data center right now, you've got a SAN, for example, that's running your data drives to your SQL Server. That's technically remote storage and it's going over a network. So you've got that latency there, and it might not necessarily be SSDs on the other end. And then if we've got a data warehouse workload, why not use Synapse? Sure, it's expensive, but it delivers a lot of value. Yeah, and if you've got Synapse, Synapse Studio, that is, so that's very similar to Azure Data Factory, but more geared around data warehousing. It's like Data Factory on steroids, I think, is probably the best way of describing it. There's a really cool feature called Azure Synapse Link. So prior to Synapse Link being in place, you might have to have data pipelines through Data Factory or SSIS, where you're doing batch jobs, where you're moving data from A to B, doing transformations. With Azure Synapse Link, it connects to multiple services. So if you think of Azure SQL Database, Managed Instance, and very recently SQL Server 2022, and also Cosmos. So as transactions are running through your live system, Synapse Link will just pick them up, run through your predefined transformation route, put them straight into your data warehouse. So you don't have that problem of reporting data being always behind live, which is something that a lot of companies really suffer from. So all that in mind, let's put this to a case study. This is loosely based on the project that I'm working on right now. So we've got Wingit Airlines, a small airline based in California. They're going through a migration project into Azure. They're based in a single data center. They need to go to Azure West US 2 within 6 months. They've got SQL servers running 2014. So for those who aren't working with SQL Server closely, SQL Server 2014 goes out of extended support in July 2024. And those of you who work with public sector, which that of course means that it's not Cyber Essentials compliant. So we've got to do something about that. And then reporting's, like we said, always a day behind. So it's through inefficient backups and restores. So at the end of each day, currently in this case study, backups are taken from the live systems, restored onto the reporting server, and then that's used for the following day's reporting, which is not really great for real-time information. So some of the transactional databases make use of FileStream. So FileStream is actually quite common in financial services because what it does is enable you, if something goes wrong, you can roll back as well, which is quite good in certain scenarios. They've got hard links in between databases. So in the store procedure itself, it says, oh, I need to reference database B from database A, but if you're doing a new deployment and you haven't deployed database B yet, the deployment of database A doesn't work. So how are you going to get around that? So applications authenticate using Windows authentication, as being poor capacity planning of the current server's physical hosts. So in the current scenario, they've got 2 failover cluster instance pairs. So a failover cluster instance pair is when you have a server a SQL Server instance on one server and you have another instance on server B, but if, for example, server B fails, it will automatically fail over to server A and host both server A and B's instances on one server. Now, due to poor capacity planning, these physical servers don't actually have enough compute resource to run both of them at their full capacity. So there's potential issues there. And are not memory optimized hosts. So, and then over time, there's been server configuration drift. So these servers were deployed back in, I think around 2015 or so. And back then, the infrastructure as code tools that we know and love now just weren't there. And they were all hand cranked. So everything is just slightly different, but different enough to cause problems. So how can we fix that? So in this case, and it's the solution we've gone in the real scenario, is go for a SQL Server always on availability group. So this was pretty a clean cut thing. So file stream is absolutely not supported by a managed instance, so that automatically rules that out, and it's not supported by Azure SQL Database either. So Kerberos authentication is needed, so managed instance might be good there. And the databases are so closely linked with those hard-coded references. So Azure SQL Database wouldn't work either without a lot of engineering work. And given the timelines of the migration, in the case of 6 months, it's just not feasible to do that. However, rather than migrating to Azure Data Factory to host their SSIS workloads, they're just going to keep using SSIS because they're already deploying SQL Server. They're going to be paying for the license as well. So you save on costs. And I think it's something that I've just remembered that I completely forgot to do with licensing. So this is something that one of the benefits to moving to Azure. So say you've got your always on availability group with your 3 nodes. So you imagine the VM in zone 1, that's your primary node, and you've got your 2 secondary nodes here. So you actually only have to pay the hybrid benefit licensing for your VM in zone 1, because that's your as your primary node. It essentially you're licensing whatever is the active node, the active primary node. However, you do have to license the Windows layer of the other 2 nodes, so that you can make some significant cost savings there. Okay, so let's talk about the approach. So first of all, let's get their databases in line with source control. So when they do the migration, if they need to do any upgrades, it's a relatively pain-free process. So yeah, plan and plan again. So some of you were familiar with the 6 Ps. So proper planning and preparation prevents poor performance. Like if you follow that to the letter, your migration should go a lot better. Template out your Azure environment. So that's your VMs, your Azure SQL databases. And then we were talking about before how you can deploy that same data infrastructure in multiple environments and be confident it's going to be the same every time. Obviously, make your release pipelines for your databases and your infrastructure, so you can automate that whole process. And test. Yeah, I mean that's pretty obvious. You think you'd do that, but you'd be surprised how much stuff isn't tested. And then we're deploy the database migration service in this case. So we're going to migrate a large chunk of databases that are mission critical. So we'd use the online migration option in this case, and then just do it. So that's all my slides. So we're just going to cut over to a live demo now. So hopefully the demo gods aren't watching and this is going to work. Okie doke. Right. Okay, so let's do a live migration from a legacy server. So we connect to our Bastion. So this is in true art attack fashion. This is one I made earlier. So let's have a quick look at our SSMS. So see what we've got on this server. If it will load. Okay, right. So on this server, we've got a few databases. We've got a sales database, it's pretty small, and we've got a bookings database as well, which has got a bit more information in. So let's run this through the migration tool. So with the migration assistant. So let's see what it's going to say when we do our assessments. Okay, so let's create a new project. Sorry, click there. So I'm going to call this demo migration. So we want to go from on-premise SQL Server to Azure SQL Database. Let's create our assessment. We want to check the database is compatible. We also want to look at feature parity as well. Okay, so has it remembered from before? Yes, it has. Cool. So let's connect to the server that we're on right now. So I am really interested in sales and the bookings database. So let's add those into the scope of my migration path. Of what I want to analyze. So let's do a quick assessment. Let's see what it's going to say. Okay. So this is at the instance level. So it's complaining file stream is not supported in Azure SQL Database. Oh no, it's a bit of a shame. And then database users map windows are not supported in Azure SQL Database. Okay, so that's not necessarily an issue. We can work around that we can convert our database users into Azure Active Directory identities. So if we're using groups, for example, to authenticate at the moment, we just use our Azure AD sync and we'll just sync those groups into Azure Active Directory and just repoint the authentication of the database to those groups. So that's a look at, are there any compatibilities? No. So that's fine. Everything seems to be fine from the sales database. So 160 is SQL Server 2022 and everything's happy there. So let's have a look at the bookings. So we said file stream is not supported. So we talk about invoices. So, well, that's not going to work. So, so what we can do, we can upload this to the Azure Migrate tool, which confusingly is not the database migration service. But because the sales database is quite small and that lets us do it, let's do an actual live migration. So we'll do this as demo migration. So we're going from SQL Server to Azure SQL Database. We want to take the schema and the structure of the database and the data itself. Cool. Right, so I want to connect to this server again. Let's add sales into the scope. Okay, I want to connect to this server. And one is probably worth noting, when I first used this tool, it was a bit stumbling block. Maybe this is a bad UX, but actually the prerequisite of you actually doing the migration, if we're going to Azure SQL Database, is you pre-create a blank database in Azure already. It's not 100% clear that you have to do that from the UI. So let's connect to this database. Okay, cool. Right, yeah, so if you want to use Azure AD authentication for your groups, you just say what domain, this is my domain, that's cool. So this is database I want to move, this is database I want to move to. So this is what is going to be the target of our migration. So let's just have a look at our sales table. So this is the one on premise. Yeah, so that's our sales data, cool. So let's click through. So this shouldn't take that long because there's only 4 tables. So I want to migrate everything. I want to generate SQL scripts for that. So it's probably worth noting that if you were following the steps that I went through on the slides to the letter, if you were using like release pipelines to deploy your database structure, etc., what you would do, you deploy your blank database in Azure, and then you would do that to deploy your structure rather than this tool auto-generating your structure for you. And then you would just, instead of migrate schema and data, you would just migrate data because it's already in place. So let's deploy our schema. So great. Now that's happy. It's deployed the 18 objects that were there. So let's do a migration. So this should be relatively quick. So it's a quite small database. Thinking about sales, I think sales has about 100,000 records in it. Right, okay. So that migration is completed now. So let's have a look. Have to use a newer version of SQL Server Management Studio because the old 2014 doesn't have doesn't support Azure properly. With the modern standards that we have now. So let's quickly load this. Okay, so I want to connect to this server. Okay, and now we see our database, and it's loading, thinking about it. Okay, we see there is the tables that we had on our on-prem server. Here's all the sales, and it's really as easy as that. With the time constraints, I don't think I have any time for more demos, but go back to Teams again. So let's go back to the slides. Will it go back to the beginning? Yes, it will. Let's go. There we go. So yeah, that's migrating Azure SQL. Yes, that's migrating Azure SQL to the cloud. So yeah, if you've got any questions, more than happy to answer them.
Awesome stuff, Joe. It's like you've done that before, time to perfection, and you had a completely successful demo. Awesome stuff, matey.
Thank you.
I think there was the one question in the chat. I just wanted to check about the DMA.
Yes.
Is there no licensing cost to run that DMA against your databases, or are there any costs involved with it?
No costs with the database migration assistant. That's completely free. And that's with the assessment and with the tool to do the migration that we were just looking at. However, the database migration service is a paid for service. So that actually is dedicated compute for the migration. So that can be quite expensive. It's been ran for a long time. Yeah.
Got you. Good stuff. I don't think there are any more questions in the chat. I'm just having a quick scan. Graham saying if only all database migrations were that quick. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But no, Joe, honestly, that was fantastic. Thanks so much for a great talk, matey. That was really good. If everybody wants to show their appreciation, either come off mute or use the emoticons, the reactions in Teams. There we are. Flood of hearts and claps. No, thanks a lot, Joe.
No worries.
Really good to see you. Stick around for the quiz now if you can.
Yes, I will do. I don't know how to stop I don't know how to stop sharing.
It's all right. Jackson is going to join us now in a second anyway.
Okay.
So stick around for Jackson's talk. We'll be cracking on with the quiz after that then as well. So there we go. Thanks a lot, Joe. Good to see you again, and no doubt we'll see you fairly soon anyway.
Yes, you will. Yeah.
Okie dokie. So we'll pass straight on over, Mr. Felden, if you are there, sir.
Hi guys. Yeah.
Hey,
thanks
Jackson,
very much,
nice to
John,
see you.
to have me here. Hopefully the energy level is still up in the sky for the next big presentation.
Oh, I think so. I'll hand straight on over to you, Jackson. Good to see you.
Okay, great. Yeah, let me just try to share my screen. Hopefully, should be fine. Okay. Yeah, I believe you can see my screen now.
Yeah, got you.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. John, thanks very much for the invite to be here, and thanks everybody who is connected today. And now the next, let's say, 1 hour is going to be all about identity. Yeah. By the way, I'm Jackson Felden, and I've been working now for a good while in IT, 30 years, I need to say. And yeah, before to kind of move and dive myself into the cloud environment, I started with Novell and then went to server on-prem, SQL Server, SharePoint. I've been following all the Microsoft, let's say, evolution, if it's the right way to say. But yeah, I started with Office 365 back in 2013. In 2015, Azure, and yeah, pretty much now my day-to-day is 100% cloud and security in these days. I'm a cloud security consultant working for Avanade, and then my day-to-day is to implement, let's say, complex projects around identity, around anything regarding security. And I'm a MVP on the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility. And yeah, if you want to follow my steps, connect with me on LinkedIn. Whatever is happening with my life, I post on LinkedIn, and I have a YouTube channel as well. All my day-to-day, what I'm doing, all the challenges I'm facing. When I find a solution, I try to find time to record some quick videos to kind of, help you from home, not to spend that much time, and be more agile on that. Anyway, let's go straight into there. John, I'm not seeing here the chat box, but you guys, if you have any questions, please just type on the chat box. And then, John, if you could help me just to kind of read those questions for me. Otherwise, we can wait at the end of the presentation, and then I can tackle all the questions.
Yeah, will
anyway,
do, Jackson.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, great. Okay, and then what I have here for today is first a quick intro in regards what's the current challenges when trying to minimize the attacks on the identity, and then let's say 1 minute review, 2 minutes maybe, review on the zero trust, because identity is one of those main pillars. And then a couple of slides all about protecting identities in regards to what are the best practices and the a couple of things everybody should implement in terms of protecting. And then there are lots of products out there to help us to understand what's happening with the identity world, all the attacks, the user activities, the challenges to try to understand what's normal and what's not normal, and then for us to follow and get alerts and then take actions, or even better than that, use Microsoft tools to take the actions automatically, because by the time an analyst maybe find an alert and try to do something, could be too late. And then I will finish this presentation talking about 3 important products from Microsoft. The first one is the Azure AD Identity Protection, and then I will move to the Defender for Identity, and the last one is the PIM, or the Privilege Identity Management. And yeah, let's say putting all together all the protections and then the other tools we can or should install in our tenant, I can guarantee we can move the security to a whole new level. Okay, as you can see, the challenges today is basically has been an increase of 300% of the identity, let's say, attacks, because of course the hackers out there, they usually start all the, let's say, the attacks via different methods. Probably the most popular is still a phishing attack. They need to get access to a user, they need to get access to a password, and then if the user is not an admin, they need to escalate the privilege, and all of those things. Microsoft, as you can see, basically needs to tackle more than 30 billion Azure AD daily authentication requests. Of course, this is not only users; it's all the elements that needs to authenticate. And then from there, Microsoft basically collect all the telemetry and can kind of understand what is the normal day-to-day pattern from anybody like me, Jackson, and then if there is anything unusual, they can flag that straight away. And of course, I think the dream of everybody is try to move everything to the cloud, but especially, big organizations, Active Directory is still playing a very important role. And we still need to make sure all the protections are in place when it comes to the Active Directory. And then, of course, using the Azure AD Connect, those identities plus the cloud-only identities talking about Microsoft in these days, go to Azure AD. But and then on top of that, of course, we talk, especially organizations out there, they use multi-cloud. There are identity on Google, identity on Amazon, and things like that. And then all the partnership with other third-party elements that will be connected with Active Directory or Azure AD. And then the other challenge as well is with all the bring your own device, where it gives more challenges for the security team into kind of make sure people who are connecting their devices can't inject any virus or any threat into the organization. This, if I try to summarize the challenges for anybody looking after the identity or the identity protection, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This seems very basic, but some of the slides I'm borrowing from Microsoft because they are very important. And to be honest, sometimes people, they spend loads of time talking about some very fancy, very complex security products, and they don't cover the basics. They forget the basics. This is the best way to say. And as you can see in this article from Microsoft, pretty much 98% of the attacks can be protected doing pretty much how many, 5 in these days basic things. I'm not going to spend much time talk about antivirus and other things. But what I want to point is from those 5 key elements, 2 are identities. The first one, as you can see in here, is apply the least privilege. It means these days, at the end, I will show a couple of tools, or let's say one tool in a specific, that we shouldn't use any user that belongs to the administrator group or belongs to the global admin on Office 365 group for read emails, for do basic support. The idea is to elevate the permissions or the permissions only when we need, using the specific time, maybe for the next 30 minutes. I need to reset a couple of passwords. For the next, 1 hour, I need to do some configuration on Intune. It doesn't make sense for me to be logged on as a user, as a global admin or Intune admin if I need to use that permission for 1 hour. Then at the end, I will show how we can do that. And these days, it's not new for anybody, but it's always important to keep talking about that. On my understanding, every single user should be enabled with multi-factor authentication. I think there is a slide coming up later. Multi-factor authentication, by itself remediates 99, if I have good memory, 99% of the attacks when it comes to the identity. Things started slowly in the past, where Microsoft initially said, oh yeah, administrators, should be enabled with multi-factor authentication. But in these days, things are better, the service is better, and I would say everybody should be, out of the box. Any new employee should come with a multi-factor authentication. And yeah, to be honest, as you can see, doing these 5 things, from those 5, 2 of them are related to identity. We can basically protect our organization, our Office 365 tenant in 98% of the attacks. But to remediate, the other things, there are a couple of other elements we need to pay attention. And then, this is why I'm here to just share a bit of information. And as I was saying as well, guys, the idea is, for us to protect identity and, not only identity, devices, data, and everything, we need to be very fast, or the system must be very fast to discover if there is any kind of, hacker already connected or kind of into our environment. We need to kind of take control back to the situation to, of course, minimize damage, minimize all the, the problems, save money, and minimize the reputation as well. This is why Microsoft is implementing more and more auto remediations for identity, for devices as well. Some of the auto remediations are, as the name suggests, they are configured automatically, but some of them, the feature is there, but unless us, or let's say one of you, go to your tenant and manually enable some features, the systems are not going to kind of auto remediate and auto protect those things. Yeah, this is the idea why Microsoft is working, let's say, day in, day out in terms of automate when there is anything wrong on the infrastructure. Anyway, at this stage, probably most of you, or maybe all of you, are already familiar with zero trust. Zero trust, to be honest, is not a new thing. We could be talking about, 12 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, about zero trust. But that time was a little bit different because cloud was not that popular like today. Even maybe 15 years ago, as I can remember from my experience, all the focus was to have a good proxy, to have a good firewall, and then we thought all the data would be saved in a on-prem firewall with all the controls, NTFS permissions, and maybe that time we could be enough, or could be okay. In these days, the data is everywhere, is on files, is on mobiles, is on Google Drive, is on the Microsoft SharePoint, is everywhere. And then using the old-fashioned controls is not good enough anymore. This is why the zero trust, especially the Microsoft zero trust, relies on a couple of pillars. The first pillar will be identity, and then the other big one, very important, is the endpoints, all the devices. Then the next one is network, and then we have data, application, and infrastructure as well. And then we need, there are controls, there are policies and processes we need to implement in all of them in order to kind of raise the security. And in that, the idea is, thanks to the, for example, conditional access, I want to make sure the users, they can only log on if the user and if the sign-in is healthy. Let's say healthy. I want to say, oh yeah, Jackson, I'm based here in Ireland. My day-to-day pattern is to log on around, after dropping my kids on the school, 9 o'clock, 9:05. I'm logged on. Usually I worked up to 5:30, 6 o'clock. If there is any remaining work to be done, I do later in the night. But usually, I try to finish by 6 o'clock. It is always from Ireland. If out of the blue there is a connection coming, a request coming from, I don't know, Australia or Japan or America, anyway, that doesn't look normal anymore. And then thanks to the control from the conditional access, we can say, you know what, Jackson supposed to work from Ireland. If there is any login coming out of Ireland, block straight away. Okay. Of course, if I'm traveling, to different places, maybe that wouldn't be the best option. And this is why using the artificial intelligence plus the machine learning, Microsoft can understand my day-to-day pattern, and then from there take different actions. And I will be talking about that later. Okay. But anyway, I'm here to present, let's say, one of the pillars, all about identity. And in order for us to kind of take any organization to the next level, pretty much whatever I'm talking today specifically for identity, we should do the same when talking about endpoint, networking, data, and so on. But anyway, let's kind of do a bit of dive into the identity and understand all the main elements we should pay attention in order to keep the security in a good level. And of course, the first one is to protect identities, protect and as well kind of, identify if there is anything looking weird or, looking out of what should be the day-to-day, activities. Again, some of them is still very, I would say, is kind of basic in these days. But as I was talking before, believe or not, multi-factor authentication, this data is from Microsoft, as you can see. Pretty much by the time we implement multi-factor authentication for every single user in our organization. Anything regarding to identity attacks, just with this simple in this day configuration, we can kind of tackle or mitigate that in 99% of the identity attacks. Of course, I could now spend maybe the next 3 hours talking about multi-factor authentication based on the Microsoft Authenticator, or Windows Hello, FIDO2, biometrics, stuff and things like that. But to keep the story short, is only username and password. That's not great anymore. Is not enough anymore when it comes to security. On top of username and password, the user should be able to provide something else. Okay, and then as some of you could be using already, we could get a notification on mobile where I can say, accept, and then, the user finally can get in. Or instead to use the multi-factor authentication, could be a text where I need to, type the text and so on. But then, Microsoft keep kind of pushing to the next level. And then, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago, multi-factor authentication was the main thing to protect identities. And then Microsoft found out only, let's say, passwords. I don't need to tell you, is a nightmare for everybody. If I can remember the numbers, if you guys work close from the kind of help desk, you might know better than me. But I saw some information before saying 60% or maybe 70% of all the support calls are related to username, or more specifically, are related to passwords. And then again, a few years back, Microsoft started to kind of push the passwordless authentication, where the user doesn't need to know anymore a password. And thanks to a fingerprint, thanks to face recognition, or using the FIDO2 authentication, we can log on, not typing any password. And then, in that alone, if you are in a cyber cafe or whatever, trying to connect, or in a cafe, let's say, somebody could be watching, over your fingers, over your shoulders, and eventually, if you don't type too fast, could read your password, maybe read your username, take a picture, maybe do a quick, video, and then if multi-factor authentication, is not enabled, disaster, later on. Instead to type password, we could implement passwordless. Some passwordless authentication can be done in these days using only the Microsoft authentication, as you already noticed with the Microsoft account. If you use any Outlook account or Hotmail account, those things, you type your username. You don't need to type the password anymore. You just need to pick on your phone the matching code. There are 3 numbers, let's say 50, 99, and 3. You just, match the number. Other companies, they want to go to the next level. They want to say, no. We want the user needs to have a physical, device. I have one here. I tested. I'm not sure if you can see from. It's the same picture from there. I just received as a gift from Fatian, and then I tested. Really easy to implement. And then again, it gives the user. This is a fingerprint reader. Basically, in order for me to get in, I need to, of course, connect on a USB device, and then basically read my name. Read my fingerprint, and then I'm in. Of course, later on, I will talk about in terms of if we protect too much, sometimes we can be in trouble. We need to have a user that can skip, some controls as a kind of break the glass administrator, but I will talk about that later. What you can do as well is to, as I implemented here, to have double, authentication. One of them is using the, the USB. If maybe I lose this USB, or, something is corrupted or something like that, then I could still use the Microsoft authentication just to give another option for the user as well. But anyway, all about protecting identities, multi-factor authentication, implementing passwordless. Microsoft is saying that brings, again, one step, let's say, on the security ladder, one step, forward, or, upwards when it comes to the security as well. If you are kind of security guy like me, maybe you have implemented already, and then I will do a quick demo in a few seconds, just to make the presentation a bit more dynamic. And then, yeah, when it comes to the smart controls, some of them are done automatically, as I will explain in a few minutes. When it comes to, if you have the right license, you could benefit in regards to Microsoft to identify who are actually the high-risk users in the high-risk login. Okay, and then depending the configuration, that could be used only as a kind of auditing, just for us. Oh, Jackson has been flagged as a high-risk user, or we can implement control saying, you know what? If any user in my organization is flagged as a high risk, the user are not going to be able to log on. Those users are not going to be able to log on in our system anymore. And, there is a support cost, on top of that. But anyway, security is the top priority in here. And then thanks to the conditional access we can kind of have here in the middle, every time when a user connects, Microsoft, again, doing all the machine learning, all the artificial intelligence, will kind of, measure that user, will kind of analyze all the sign-in properties. Does that come from a public IP or maybe from an anonymous IP? Is that from Ireland? Is that from a unknown place where Jackson, never been before? All of those kind of elements are analyzed, and then there is a kind of algorithm running in behind, and then Microsoft will flag that as a normal, low, high, or medium medium risk. And then with the control, I could say no user with let's say high or medium risk is able to log on our system. Or maybe on SharePoint and OneDrive there are some good controls. Maybe the user could log on, but only for read only, some additional controls. But yeah, that's the beauty of the conditional access, okay, in here, where we can implement controls, and then based on that, the user will be able to log on or maybe not, okay? Maybe let me just explain this bit here, and then I will do a quick demo. Okay. I don't need to tell you, this control here is for everybody. We can do based on user, based on group, based on everybody, but maybe, we want to exclude one or two users, and so on. It's very, very flexible. And of course, we need to pay attention, especially on the high privilege users, all admins and, with a special roles. And then for those guys, we could say, you know what, those guys only are able to log on our Azure AD if there are, two important things here, if they match. Okay, the first one, as you can see in here, the device from where they are connecting needs to be managed by our organization, and better than that, must be compliant, security compliant. This configuration is done on Intune, and we can connect on the Defender for Endpoint as well. And then we said, the device must have antivirus enabled, all the patches must be, update, the AV must be fully updated, we set whatever is the criteria. If one of those elements is not present, or is missing, the device is set as non-compliant, and then in this case, the user, one of our admin, won't be able to do any admin work at all. The next one, for the organizations using Azure AD Connect and having a hybrid environment, we could force any kind of admin work, maybe reset a password, change Intune configuration, change anything regarding security, only can be done from a device that is compliant and is a domain join. Okay, it means, one of those guys that is connected is joined to a local domain controller, local kind of, Active Directory domain. Otherwise, again, those users, they won't be able to log on to our system. Just to, again, bring one step further, the configuration. Some of you, maybe you are kind of, familiar with the conditional access. Some of you maybe never seen. Let me show where is the place we can implement. Okay, if I go here to, as you can see, hopefully you can see, portal, Okay, yeah, here portal.azure.com, and then let me jump straight into the Azure. Oops, no, sorry, into the Azure Active Directory. If I click in there, here's the place to create users, reset passwords, and so on. But let me go straight to the key point, all about security. If I click on security, yeah, and then here is the place where I can dive into the conditional access. And from there, click on conditional access. Yeah, now as any other policy available, on the Microsoft, let's say, portal, here's the place where I can create a new policy. I have one here already. And then if I create a new policy, now is the place where I can kind of, create a specific policy only for admins, other policy for sales, other policy for, guys working from Australia and, whatever. Yeah, here is a place where I could say this policy I'm going to apply for every single user on my organization, or I could select, in my case here, I already selected only 2 users. Okay, that's a place to do that. And of course, every time we are including, users, we can exclude as well. Okay, next step is this condition I want to create specifically for an app. Okay, in this case is for any app, okay, because I'm not selecting anything. But I could say, you know what, I want to select here only for, only for Exchange Server, sorry, not Exchange Server, Exchange Online, or only for SharePoint. And then is really flexible where we can have different conditions for a specific apps. In this case, I want to keep, for basically all the apps. And now finally, the condition, and for me to start, connecting the dots is the following. First, let me start with location. Loads of kind of, complex organization I've been working for them to minimize the kind of, to minimize the risk. They say, any basic user is not allowed, again, depends the organization, is not allowed to connect from any place outside of Ireland. Or on my pretending story, let's say my organization has an office in Ireland and France. Okay, people can log on only from there. If there is a request coming from any other place, okay, the system, doesn't allow the user to connect. Okay, what I was saying before, guys, here is the policy as well. If this, Microsoft flags a user as high or medium, let's say risk, and then I could here on giving access to say deny access for those users straight away. Okay, we could maybe I'm not talking about user, but I could be talking about I could be talking about sign in. There is a sign in request now coming from an anonymous IP address. Anonymous IP address. Yeah, that doesn't look good. Same story. Microsoft will flag that as a medium or high, and then thanks to this policy, I could kind of deny any login coming from any user that is flagged as high risk sign in. Okay. Anyway. Long story, but I just want to show a couple of things. And then finally, when I'm happy with the condition I'm creating, the next step is to set the kind of the permission. If I want to block users or to allow users based on the condition I brought or I created. Sorry. In my kind of pretending story, if those 2 users they are connecting from Ireland or France, and let's say they are my administrators, and if their devices have been flagged as compliant, and they are connecting from a device that is a domain join from my local Active Directory, local domain, there you go, and then I'm happy to allow them to get in, okay, to get access. In a few minutes, I will talk about the break the glass user, but as you can see, every time when we start implementing these controls, it can give you a huge headache. Because if you don't pay attention much in here, you could lock out, maybe locked out every user from your tenant out of login. And then the only problem, as in the past, I had to help some organizations. We need to call Microsoft, ask for support, and kind of headache that doesn't look good. This is why in a few minutes I will talk about a break the glass user. Anyway, just that's a kind of quick demo. Let me now just go back to here. Oh yeah, there you go. This is the kind of the next user. As you can see, especially with conditional access, can be very easy, very easy to lock out maybe all administrator or to lock out maybe, every single user in our organization. And then if you do a bit of research on kind of Microsoft website, you will find break the glass user. In this case is, we need to have 1 or 2 users who are kind of out of that scope. Of course, they need to have a very strong password, some of controls, of course, but they need to be out of that complex scope because, how about every single user to connect is a federated user? It means, the authentication goes to the cloud, but needs to come into the Active Directory to get a final authentication. How about if there is a problem on the firewall or on the Active Directory, and then, the admin can't log on anymore? Or maybe, I never seen, but let's say there is a big problem on the Microsoft Authenticator app or Microsoft Authenticator backend engine, and nobody can do multi-factor authentication anymore. Again, I never seen, but, we never know. And maybe the only person who used to be the global admin, there was a big fight and the guy just left the organization and there is no password, nobody knows about that user. Or anything else that could happen. Maybe the administrator lost his mobile, now he can't log on to the account anymore, all of those problems. This is why the idea behind the break the glass user or administrator is to have a user only use for those unpredictable cases where that user can log on with no multi-factor authentication or no conditional access and so on, to make sure we have at least one user that can work in case of, when everything else goes out of control. Okay, please don't forget to implement that, because otherwise, as I said, I already had to help other organizations out there to kind of recover the tenant, because it was, I think 90% of the cases is because the conditional access, they kind of misconfigured the conditional access. Anyway, these are a couple of, let's say, controls we can implement to protect, but that's, let's say, one of the factors we need to consider. Another one, very important as well, is for us to keep our eye to understand what's happening on the kind of day-to-day authentication between our users and kind of between on-prem, on the cloud, and so on. And then with the right tools, I'm going to explain in a few seconds, Microsoft can help us to identify a couple of things like, in here, the atypical travel. That's very easy for Microsoft to know. And I already gave you the example. My day-to-day is to log on from Ireland, and then maybe 9 o'clock, I just logged in here from Ireland, and 2 hours later, there is a log on from, from Sydney in Australia. Microsoft will catch that straight away and set as impossible travel time, because it's impossible to be in Australia 2 hours after being in Dublin, of course, unless you have a VPN or something, but that's not normal. And then that user or that sign-in will be kind of catched straight away as a typical travel. Password spray. When somebody from outside get a single password, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then try that single password in every single user in our organization. Okay, didn't work. Second password pass 1, 2, 3, same story. Spray to every single user. Microsoft can catch that and flag to us. And the last one is really interesting. Leaked credentials. Probably I don't need to tell you, there is a huge e-commerce, if I could call, on the special dark web, where it's very easy for you to buy username and password from, different organizations out there. What Microsoft does is they keep, scanning all of those, the dark web, all of those sites 24/7. And every time when there is a password when there is a username and password that matches with any Office 365, any of those millions of Azure AD users, if you have, the right license, you will get a message saying, and, I've been helping some big organizations out there on the SOC team, to kind of teach them and to implement the security, showing them how to read all the information that is available. And yeah, time by time, we catch users, the alerts for leaked credentials available on the dark web. Okay, I will show the tool that can kind of identify and notify us and kind of disable that user altogether, kind of straight away. Okay, and yes, I kind of already told you, this one here is not new. Sorry, we shouldn't really use any administrator, global admin, Intune administrator, or whatever is the. I'm not only talking about full administrator or global admin or on the cloud. I'm talking, any elevated role. We shouldn't be using those users, let's say 24/7. The idea is engage or kind of claim, if is that the right word, kind of request that role only for the time you need it. Could be 30 minutes, could be 1 hour, could be 2 hours, and so on. And a part of that, keep using your basic user to read emails and do your kind of admin day to day. Okay, people sometimes, in the past when I used to teach loads of courses, people used to come after me just asking for some advice. What should they do in terms of the local administrator? Some, talk about Windows 10, Windows 11, servers, every single local administrator. Some of them, they implemented some PowerShell scripts where, every week or every few days, a PowerShell script would run for every single device and change the administrator password. And then to avoid that, Microsoft is a free tool. Okay, Microsoft created something called Local Administrator Password Solution, or LAPS, where the local administrator doesn't have a local password, and the password actually is saved on the Active Directory. And then that password can kind of, rotate as well. And if when we really need to log on with a local administrator, we can check using that tool, to recover. This tool avoid these two terrible software, okay, WCE and the PWDump7, those softwares, they can easily, if you can run on the local device, they can easily go after the local cache or the kind of local credentials. And as you can see in here, can reveal what is the username and the user and the password stored locally. This is, again, one more tool looking after the local administrator passwords. Okay, before moving, hopefully I'm not going too fast, again, I'm not going to read all of them, and I forgot to ask John, but hopefully this video will be available later on the YouTube or somewhere, and then you guys can play back and maybe read, pause, and then read and think and so on. Yeah, here just a kind of summary what most of the organizations out there, some key elements they do in terms of protecting and maintaining the identity in a healthy state. Some of them I already explained: break the glass, enforce multi-factor authentication, implement conditional access, block highly privileged users, and all of those things. And now I'm going to talk about these 3 additional tools. Okay. Hopefully your brain is not too tired. You can stay, focused here with me. In, a very important, 3 very important tools that can help you first, to understand what's happening on all the kind of day-to-day identity activities, and kind of, how can help you as well to protect those identities. Sorry, John, I'm not reading here any comments. Is there any question, or can I just carry on? Hopefully everybody's happy.
Yeah, I think there's been a few bits and pieces. We can review the chat at the end if that's all right. I think there's people have been answering them for themselves.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, let me finish
on.
then a few slides, and we can tackle if there is any remaining question. Okay, thanks very, very much for those guys already answered those questions. That's the spirit of community. That's great. Yeah. Okay, guys, let's go to the last few slides from my presentation. I want to talk about 3 interesting products, okay, available to help to protect and identify any weird activity on the identities. The first one is the Azure AD Identity Protection. Okay, and I don't have any slide here to talk about license. Okay, some of the elements they are, or pretty much the ones I'm going to talk now, they are more related to the Azure AD P2 or Azure AD Premium 2. Okay, of course, basic stuff like multi-factor authentication, this is available, I believe, in these days not for anybody. But for example, the Azure AD Identity Protection, unfortunately, you need to have an Office 365 subscription that comes with the Azure AD P2, or in the worst case scenario, you can pay, additional. You can pay for users. If you don't want to apply for everybody, you could, just add as an add-on for maybe 10 users, 20 users, or, whatever you need. Anyway, basically, the Azure Identity Protection is a tool that, can, as I was saying already, can identify any, how could I say, unusual activities from the sign-in user and so on. A couple of things I will show you now is better. A couple of things I already told you. For example, in here, the anonymous IP addresses, if there is any login coming from those weird, websites, atypical travel, malware linked IP addresses, unfamiliar sign-in properties, leak credentials, and so on. Anyway, let me show the interface, then it's better to understand. Okay, if I go back to my, let me go back to my Azure AD, again, here back to the portal.azure.com, and then same story if I go back to security. If I click in there, and then, yeah, there you go. There is a special button here called Identity Protection. If I click in there, yeah, here, there are a couple of things. Unfortunately, this is not a production environment. It is my own lab, and then, there is no much much activities, happening in here. But in a proper kind of, real environment, you will see all the, risky sign-in, risky, users, and so on in here. Okay, talking about user risk policy, I can click in here. And guys, please remember, part of the configuration I already showed when I went to the conditional access, as hopefully you can remember. From the conditional access, we can create different conditions to allow or to deny access. And part of the condition is if the user has been flagged as a risky user, kind of high risky, high level, or medium, or low, or so on. Now, the specific configuration here, I could target all my users, okay, or some organizations out there, especially when they are in the kind of implementation phase, they start small, maybe add 10 users, then 20 users, kind of baby steps. But in my case, it's for every single user. And then the user risk in here should be low or above, okay? And then what I'm going to do with, when any user is flagged, or maybe let me set as a medium and above. And then if I click in, sorry, first I need to click on done. And then if I go to controls, click in here, that's a place where it's kind of, part of the conditional access, but in here, I could say, I don't care, block altogether. Okay, anything, any user flagged as high risk, blocked, altogether. Or again, I could say, what, let's, allow the user, but the user must be forced to change the password. Okay, that's unfortunately is the only 2 controls we have specifically in this screen. Again, if you want a bit of more flexibility, and then the place to go would be to the conditional access. Same story, I can click in here in sign in risk policy. Yeah, let me just click on there. Sign in. Again, now it's not specifically related to a user. This is in general, as quickly I told you. Every time when there is a login request, Microsoft analyzes, all the elements coming from that request, and then same story. This policy for sign in risk policy. I want to apply for all users, same story. Maybe let me set as a medium and above. And here, if the properties are a little bit, dodgy, maybe that's the right word to say, block altogether. I don't care about the user. Okay. Or I could say, you know what? Okay, allow the user to connect, but the user will be forced to, get the authorization from the multi-factor authentication. Okay, these are the only two policies, not complex at all, we can configure. But as I was saying before, it's not only about the controls available, it's very important for us to keep an eye on the activities, happening on the users and authentication, so on. If I want to get a quick report about, let's get to know who are the risky users. And then, if I click, let me just click there. Yeah, if I click in here, now I will see all the users flagged as risky. Again, based on my real life experience, helping other enterprises out there, easily we could see here 10 users flagged as high risk, maybe, 30 users flagged as medium risk, and so on. And then it's very important to understand why. If I click now in this user, again, unfortunately, I don't have good examples in here, but what I want to say is when you click on a high risk user, we can get a better information about that user and then eventually get the risk history. Okay, to understand, why that user eventually became was flagged as a high risk. And again, in a real environment, kind of, real production environment, here will be a bunch of different things. For example, because the user was found in a dark web, for sale, the credentials was found in a dark web for sales. That user straight away will be set as a high risk. And then thanks to the policy, we implemented, that user won't be able to log on until we come here and eventually, confirm the user is not a high risk anymore. Okay, and then it's very important, especially if you are, head of the security or responsible for the security, it's very important to provide a good training for all the analysts or, the SOC team, for them not only to get to know who are the high risk users, but to kind of, go a little bit deeper and understand why that user became, was flagged as a high risk. That's great. Same story if I click on the risky sign in. Again, not specifically about user. Now regarding the, as I was saying before, kind of, dodgy way the sign in comes, to Microsoft. I don't have any example here, but same story. In a real environment, we would see the information. And if I click, I can always go deeper to understand why that particular sign in, Jackson 930, was flagged as a risky sign in. Okay. Anyway, a couple of things we can see from here when we are talking about identity protection. I would say from tomorrow, maybe have a look if these options are available for you. If they are, well done. And then good news, I would say, review the configuration and start, analyzing in a daily basis or worst case scenario, weekly basis. If the options are not available, and then most likely you don't have Azure AD, premium, and then you could maybe, consider to add that into the, your kind of cost and to improve the security. Okay, next one, guys, that's a massive piece of software and very interesting. Microsoft Defender for Identity. And the beauty of that, it works for on-prem and cloud. Usually a question I get is, okay, the identity on cloud, they are, I wouldn't say they are safe, but, we have a good visibility with all the, as I told you before, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and probably you guys came across, if I have a good memory, Microsoft keeps saying they analyze 45 billion signals daily. Okay, not only about identity now, in general, 45 billion signals daily, and then from there is a huge machine learning in artificial intelligence, kind of measuring and kind of analyzing what's happening. Anyway, let's go straight into it, guys. The beauty of the Microsoft Defender for Identity is we install a kind of little agent into the domain controllers. If we install in one domain controller, we will start kind of, getting some information I will share with you in a few minutes. But the best practice, if Microsoft haven't changed, no, is still the best practice, is to install that agent in every single domain controller in your organization. And then, guys, you will be surprised. You'll be surprised with what you can find. Here's a good example. You can identify all the kind of, the security posture when it comes from the local identity in the domain controllers, and start kind of finding some really interesting things. Okay, maybe in your organization, there could be third-party software connected to Active Directory, and those guys, they don't do the encryption when the user connects. And then, you will see, in this case, a clear password available here from a user. Any hacker who is scanning the network, could see that as well. We can see, in this case, when somebody tries to get control using the kind of machine permissions. Sometimes when you install a software, you need to kind of give permission for the application to do something on the device, and sometimes that permission means to take over the whole device. And very, very important as well to understand if you are still using any old-fashioned authentication protocol, like those really old, the NTLM authentication. The idea is from the conditional access to disable those old authentications, protocols altogether. But using the Defender for Identity, all of those information that I wouldn't say they are impossible to see, but if you try to find those things via Event Viewer, oh my goodness, it's really challenging. You can see information like this as well, the kind of, the best practice is stop legacy protocols, communication. Again, disable all those protocols or enable conditional access, to disable that. If the domain controller or the server is not used as a kind of, printer spooler, disable the printer spooler in that. And here, make sure you install the Azure ATP sensor, or the kind of, the sensor I was talking to you, in every single domain controller to have visibility for everything, because we don't want to miss anything. A couple of more things you can see. This is absolutely brilliant. I'm not sure, for some of you guys, kind of a specialist in Active Directory, you are familiar with this important file. Okay, for the guys who are new in this business, the ntds.dit, excuse me, located on C Windows NTDS folder, probably I can say is the most important file for any domain controller, because this is the Active Directory database. This file basically holds every single user, every single group, passwords, all the Active Directory is held in here. And then what's really dodgy is a particular user, okay, at some stage managed to copy that file. As you can see, here's the guy. Just to kind of, quickly show you. Sorry, got lost here. What I want to, I just want to give a quick zoom. Yeah, and then what I'm saying, a guy called Hardis have copied the NTDS, okay, 73 megs from the domain controller 1. And then the same guy copied that file from domain controller 2. Another bad guy copy from domain controller 2 as well. Don't need to tell you, that's really a case of data asphyxiation, where people are kind of stealing the Active Directory database with every single user, every single password, to later on with a special tool try to kind of open that file and so on. Okay, again, I never seen this sort of information via Event Viewer. I'm not sure if it's available, from there. This is why it will be important to install this feature. There you go. And then a couple of other things I was saying already. Let's say with all of those features enable. This is a quick print screen from the Cloud Defender for Cloud. And then from there, we can get some additional, alerts. Okay, this saying, oh yeah, the user Jeff is leaked credentials. It means, as I told you before, Microsoft managed to find his credentials for sale, somewhere in the dark web. Okay, and then I believe the last screen for this, for the Defender for Identity as well, a couple of important things. Every single user in our organization will get kind of user identity score. And then from there, we can identify some interesting activities as well. Maybe this user, there is no need for that user to connect via RDP. Okay, to connect via RDP, the file server. Okay, and then that user is doing a mass, as you can see here as well, doing a mass download as well. And the mass download could be, anything from SharePoint, OneDrive, and so on. Anyway, of course, we need to implement the controls, but we need to make sure we have the tools not only to protect, but to identify and to flag us if any dodgy activity, is happening in our organization. Okay, and then the last one, okay, hopefully you guys are not too tired. Okay, the last one is the privilege identity management. This is just to kind of, finish the story. As I already told you, as I told you already 3 times probably, we shouldn't be using any elevated permissions unless we need. And this is the piece of, let's say, piece of software that help us do that, to get access for me to become an Intune administrator when I need it, to become a security administrator when I really need to go and make changes on the conditional access, okay? The access is going to be just enough access. If I need to make changes on the, on the Exchange mailboxes, okay, it's possible for now for us to give a specific permissions only to change, update mailboxes and so on. And the beauty is everything is available for future auditing to get to know, okay, why Jackson Saturday 10 p.m. logged on and resetted a couple of passwords. Okay, the beauty of that, guys, as well is maybe it's better. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, it's better for me to show how it works. Okay, guys. The idea is the following. Nobody is going to be added, let's say, as a full-time employee, global administrator. Nobody is going to be added as a full-time employee, as an Intune administrator, and so on. And then I have a user here called, as you can see on the top, called Alex. And then let's say this is our Intune administrator, okay? And then his day-to-day, he reads email, he does lots of things. But by the time he really needs to go into the Intune and make some changes, or he needs a special permission, what he needs to do is to go to the portal.azure.com and then go into the. Of course, we can always search in here. Okay, I could search for a PIM, Azure AD Privilege Identity Management. Click in there. And then from here, my roles. Okay, my roles means the global administrator, or whatever the person looking after the privilege identity management can assign some roles for this user. In this case, Alex. If Alex is going to be the Intune administrator, we can assign that role. To say that role is permanent, but every day when Alex needs to work, Alex needs to kind of request the role. To elevate the privilege, or maybe we could add that privilege for a few days only, until he finished the project. And then Alex, when clicking here, we'll see, at the moment, right now, Alex is not eligible for any of the roles. I just need to activate. But as you can see, in the past, Alex was assigned Intune administrator, security operator, and security administrator. To be honest, it can be any role on the Active Directory. And then when Alex wants to kind of needs to get access, Alex just need to click on activate. Needs to put a kind of explanation why he wants to connect that and for how long he needs that privilege. Could be 30 minutes, could be 1 hour, could be 8 hours, or whatever. And then the elevation can be done automatically, or we can create a small workflow that goes to somebody else. Somebody else will, check. Oh yeah, Alex. Oh yeah, I know he's working today. He needs 5 hours to finish the project, and then activate that, and then pretty much a job done. Okay. Again, guys, unfortunately, Team is not for free. Okay, it doesn't come available in every single subscription. Have a look back on your organization if that is included. If not, I'm afraid you need to kind of get a better license for that if it's not available. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. Sorry for the high speed. I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to give you a kind of good overview to point out some key elements you need to pay attention when looking for, take all the identities to a next level when it comes to security. That's pretty much it, John. Now I'm open for some questions if the guys are not too tired.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you so much,
And thanks
Jackson.
very much for
one
more time for the invite to be here.
No, absolutely. Thank you for your time, Jackson. Really appreciate it. I'm just looking through the chat. Yeah, there's quite a bit of chat going on there. I know Dean Ellaby is always the one. He attends these user groups and throws in the licensing questions.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lovely licensing question in there. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Jackson, but around Azure AD Premium Plan 2. Oh, there we go, Dean. Speak for yourself. You're there.
I don't want it. Yeah, you can read it out, John. It's fine.
So the features that you get, the parity difference between P1 and P2 and Azure AD, do you know for risky sign-ons and some of the other features sets that you get with P2, do you know if you need to license them on a per user basis, or do you need to just license one admin user that can kind of run the reports on behalf of some users? How does that work?
No, yeah, that's very good question. In some organizations, what I see is not only for admin. If you want, for the user to, let's say, to be analyzed, to find leaked credentials and all of those things, is per user. And then some organizations, if they think the cost is too high, let's say too expensive to license every single user, maybe 300 or 1,000. Sometimes they license only some key users. Could be the admin, could be the managers, or so on. But it's per user. Yeah, it's per user. You do that.
You all right, Dean?
Yeah, it's per user.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything, unless somebody wants to come off mute. There's quite a bit of chatter. Everybody was taking a shine to the name of my user account here. Don't look at my name, Jackson. But there's a story behind that, so we'll leave that one there for now because it's Christmas. Look, Jackson, fantastic session. Thank you so much for running us through that. Loads of great information around the world. Security is certainly an area that's grown and grown and grown at the moment. So thank you for talking us through it all.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much, John, and everybody for the great opportunity to be here. And yeah, we never know. Maybe next year I could come back for talk about something else, maybe another pillar like devices or data and other stuff.
Oh, for sure, we'll get you back. Yeah, absolutely, Jackson. But stick around if you've got time. Stick around.
Okay.
Please do take part in the quiz. So it's a festive quiz. So I'm going to hand on over to Mr. Fatunka now. Well, before that, if everybody wants to show their appreciation to Jackson. Apologies.
Okay, thanks very much, guys. Yeah, really appreciate it.
And okay, so let's crack on then, Matt. It's the quiz. We got a total of 4 prizes tonight, so I think we'll just do the top 4.
I guess so. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So there's.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, John. I need to go. I need to check if my kids are still alive downstairs. Okay, guys. Thanks very much again. See you next time. Happy Christmas, everybody. Bye bye.
Cheers, Jackson. Right.
So as long as we've got over 4 players, we'll be all right.
Here we go. I'm coming in as well.
Are you coming in as break glass admin?
Well, now that you said that,
I'm in sunglasses. You guys don't have a chance.
Excellent. I think that's about it.
how many we got? The 10. There's 14. There's you. So in theory, there might be a couple misses. Anybody struggling to get on?
Oh, one more.
One more.
Right, these are very Christmas centric. So I apologise. There are some bad jokes in there. I also apologise. No, actually, no. I make no apologies for those. Those are deliberately terrible. Is everyone ready? Then
Let's
let's
go for
rock. What's the title of this movie? Sneaky one. It was Home Alone 2. Ah, you see. Told you it was sneaky.
Recognise the house behind them.
What's the title of this Christmas classic? Easy one. Miracle on 34th Street. Yeah, majority of people knowing that one. Good. What Christmas song are the Plastics dancing to in this iconic Mean Girls scene? I'd never heard of this one. I found it on another quiz that somebody else had done this week. Should be a straight 25 split. It's Jingle Bell Rock. Oh, there's a lot of Mean Girls fans in the audience by the looks of it. That's slightly disturbing. In which year was the first Christmas card sent? 1743, 1843, 1943, or 1066? It was 1843. Oh, look at that. Split the answers. Which famous scientist was born on Christmas Day in 1642? It was Isaac Newton. Yes, people know that one. He's making it twice. Which GDPR article is Santa in breach of? It's a random guess, that one, I think. Correct answer is Article 4.
Dear.
Why did NoSQL leave the restaurant? Told you it was a bad joke. I was trying to find a SQL joke and an identity joke. Because he couldn't find a table. There we go. How many characters does Tom Hanks voice in the Polar Express? Oh, look at that. Split across all of them. The answer was 6. In Elf, what's the first rule in the Code of the Elves?
They talk about Christmas.
That's also the second rule. Treat every day like Christmas. Wise words. And lastly, what's the name of the giant snow monster that guards Elsa's palace in Frozen? I'd like to believe he was called Bob. No one got that right. It's actually Marshmallow. Olaf is the little snow monster. Go on then, let's see what the results are. I think that's the end of them. Oh, John.
Yes. I won.
So it looks like Graham, Nick, Joe, and Tiago.
Right, I'm making a screen capture that. Obviously, I'm not going to take first place, even though I'm going to gloat in getting. I think I only got 2 wrong now. That was a sheer fluke by anything. Right, okay. So Graham Griffiths, you are going to get an Elgato gift set with a Stream Deck Mini, a notepad and pen. I did have a picture of it on one of the slides, and a nice coffee mug there for you. Nick, I think you're online for a £25 Amazon voucher. Joe, you're going to get yourself a code to go and get you some Microsoft swag. And Tiago, I'm going to send you over an Azure hoodie. So do me a favor for both. Well, can you? I tell you what. Let me just share my screen. I'll put my email up. Well, actually, no. I'll just paste it in the chat window. It's probably easiest. I can type for a second.
There you go.
If
You can
you-
go and pick up your own bit.
Say that again.
You can go and pick up your own bit, the raccoon.
Yeah, Bit is on the swag store, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, yeah, do me a favor. I've just dropped my email in the chat. Just send me an email if you've won first place or fourth place. So Tiago and Graham, drop me a postal address over, and I'll get those shipped out to you ASAP. And then the second and third place, I can get you the code sent over straight.
I will get you an address that I have in the UK, because if you ship this to Portugal, it will never arrive. It will just stop in customs and all that stuff.
Fair enough.
But I have a
Okey-doke,
customer that I go to the UK all the time, so
no worries.
They will store it. They will store it, and then I will pick it up when I'm there. Okay.
No, perfect. No problem at all.
Yeah.
Tiago, I'll get that sent out. Yeah, drop me an email. It'll act as my little aid memoir as well. So, well done, everybody. Well, there we go. We've made it to the end of the event. We'll wrap this one up now, and we can all start. And I'm assuming everybody like me is finished for Christmas now, or am I just gloating? I'm not in the next couple of days, so sorry all. So I'm going to get cracking with my eggnog and Christmas treats now. It's time to break the seal on the quality street. Ignore the wife telling me I shouldn't be eating all the kids' snacks, and I'm going to go and do that right now. So firstly, thank you to the awesome Joe and Jackson for giving up the time tonight and coming on and teaching us a little bit about SQL and identity. Really appreciate you guys coming on and taking us through all that. Thank you for everybody for joining. Save the date time. Next session is due on the 18th of January in the new year. Usual time, 6:30 p.m. Put it in your diaries. But for now, thank you everybody for joining. If you do get 5 minutes, you can scan that QR code and drop us a little bit of feedback. That would be awesome. But for now, thank you everybody. Hope you've had a fantastic time.
Thanks
Yeah,
all.
it was a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the sessions. Were pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, nice to see you, Tiago. Yeah, and obviously have a
Thanks,
great
Phil.
Christmas, everybody. Have a great
Yeah.
break, whatever you're up to, and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Bye bye, everyone.
Cheers,
Cheers.
Scott. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers all. See you all soon.
Bye bye. Bye bye.